if we can operate from this place of honoring like our organism, of moving and eating out of a place of love for ourselves versus hating ourselves, I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do.
So you're a behavioral therapist, nutritionist, trainer, bodybuilding competitor, and mom. What was the catalyst that brought these roles together into what you do today?
You left drug addict and high school dropout off that resume. So, when you can never really connect the dots looking forward, but looking backwards, it was really kind of my troublesome teenage years that led me to a downward spiral. And there was a moment where I realized that having the life that I wanted, I wasn't going to be able to have if I was continuing on with the behaviors that I was engaged in. So, from the academic perspective, I went to behavior school. I got a master's degree in social work. I became board certified in behavioral analysis and then certified in nutrition and training, really to heal myself. The substance use was largely due to stimulant use to be thin. And so, it was really a journey in understanding kind of what led me to that, understanding how to change those habits and behaviors that I had ingrained in myself and then wanting to do it the right way. So that's really how it all harmonized. I think becoming a natural bodybuilder, there's a difference between natural and not natural bodybuilders. So becoming a natural bodybuilder was truly the crescendo for me of the most on point behavior, the most on point nutrition, the most on point training, especially as a busy working mom.
A lot to unpack there. And I think the behavioral therapy piece is so interesting in that I'm going to guess that most of our listeners know what to do in terms of what they should eat, probably what they should avoid in terms of their diet, how often they should work out. Yet we slip. We don't always do it. And typically, when we really go off the deep end, at least in my experience, there's something bigger at play mentally, emotionally. And so let's talk about behavioral therapy and how you incorporate it. Because you're not just, and I know this from you working with Colleen, you don't just go to the gym and you say, here's what we're going to do. It's a lot deeper than that. So walk us through behavioral therapy, how you think about it, and how you integrate it into how you work with your clients.
Yeah, I think modifying our habits and behaviors is truly teaching someone to fish instead of giving them a fish. I think you can, a lot of people can give you a fish, but truly dialing in the behavior and the habit pieces is what is necessary in creating long-term sustainable change. I think you hear oftentimes, forget motivation, it's all about consistency. And that sounds great, but a lot of people don't know how to build that consistency. And that consistency is built through our habits and our behaviors. So, I think as a behavioral therapist, we look at environment as a big contributor to what outcomes we get. And so environment is a big one, but truly, beliefs leading to thoughts, thoughts leading to behaviors, behaviors leading to outcomes. This is the model that we play with within my practice. It's understanding that life is unpredictable. We're not going to be motivated all the time. We're working. We have kids asking for snacks every 2 seconds. They also leave that really good like grilled cheese crust on the plate and you want to eat it. And so how can we structurally bring elements in to modify our environment, modify our beliefs and our thoughts? And that truly does dictate our outcomes in a deeper way.
So let's say I'm a woman and I come to you and I have the goal, which I think is very common, I want to increase my lean muscle mass, but at the same time, decrease my body fat. And so walk us through what that looks like and some of the questions you ask to get that client set up for success.
So, when we're looking to reduce body fat and increase lean muscle mass at the same time, we're talking about a slight caloric deficit while keeping stimulus on skeletal muscle via protein consumption and resistance training. So, the question is how we can be successful. It's simple, it's not easy. So, that's really all you have to do to achieve that body recomposition over time. The questions that I would ask someone coming in would be take some pictures of your food for a couple days and send it to me so I can see what you're consuming. I would ask them, what movement do you enjoy? And, talk to me about how your schedule looks, like when we could fit it in. So I always want to assess baseline. I want to assess like what they're currently consuming. I want to see what their movement protocol, what they're able and willing to do with that. And then we look at that baseline and we make small 1 degree shifts in order to achieve that slight caloric deficit and keep more stimulus on skeletal muscle through resistance training and higher lean protein consumption.
So you mentioned the slight shift, and I'll just reference Colleen because she's my wife and she works with you, and I know what some of the slight shifts she's done. And one of them is her drink in the morning. Instead of going with a full fat milk, she switched to, an oat milk or a nut milk, and it was subtle, but over time, if you're looking at macros, that's a small shift that matters if you're looking to get into a slight caloric deficit and reduce your fat intake.
Yeah, definitely. Fats have 9 calories per gram, and proteins and carbs have 4 calories per gram. The bioavailability of those calories is another conversation. But in essence, this is one of the biggest things that I see in my practice. People come to me and they're like, I eat healthy, I work out every day. I don't know why I don't have the health and fitness outcomes that I'm looking for. And we start the conversation of there's two paths that diverged in the woods. We have holistic nutrition on one path, and we have fitness nutrition on the other path. Holistic nutrition says avocados are good for you. They've got monounsaturated fats, they've got a lot of fiber. And Brazil nuts, do you know how much selenium is in them? They're great for your thyroid. You should eat Brazil nuts. And holistic nutrition also cares about organic and sourcing of the food. And a lot of my clients have nailed that. They know what healthy eating is, they know what good holistic nutrition is. What they're missing is the fitness nutrition path. Now, the fitness nutrition path says we don't really care about the micronutrients of the food, the vitamins, the minerals, all that good stuff that the holistic nutritionists care about. What we care about over on the fitness nutrition side is how many macros and calories you're consuming. It could be from Funyuns and Diet Pepsi. And so obviously we need to write a line in the middle where we're honoring the holistic nutrition gods, we're honoring the fitness nutrition gods. We are eating holistically, nutritionally healthy foods within the right constitution and amounts that fitness nutritionists would say is pretty good. That's the biggest thing, that if you are a good holistic nutrition eater, you're over consuming fats and you're under consuming lean proteins. And that's where we really have to look at the fitness nutrition world to pull some wisdom from and say, we're not team A, team B. We can cherry pick, we can write a line in the middle.
Very well said. I think two things immediately come to mind in that tension, that war, if you will, which I think are timely. One is the David protein bar, which a lot of people in the holistic nutrition world can't stand because some of the ingredients, but more in the fitness nutrition world because of the macros. They say this is amazing. This is you're getting your protein. It's relatively low in terms of the calories, and so this is incredible. And then I think of nut butters. You get a great organic almond butter or macadamia, whatever nut butter you subscribe to. You take a giant scoop of it and put it in your protein smoothie. There's some very real calories there.
For sure. And I think the examples you brought up were great because we're talking about processed foods. Nut butter is a processed food. Your human organism will intake nuts with a different caloric profile than it will nut butter because of the availability of it. Your body doesn't have to work so hard to digest a nut butter as it does actual almonds or actual peanuts. So when we look at so we have like nuts as unprocessed, Nut butter is slightly processed. The David protein bar is so ultra processed, right? And so you look at this spectrum of processed foods, and it's really hard for the consumer to know what to look for. When I'm coaching, I think that the biggest things to look for, if you're in the store and you're wondering what protein bar to get, if you're in the store and you have different products, ideally, you're buying the ones that don't have a label, but all of us do consume and enjoy some processed foods. So when you're looking at that label, first thing that we want to look for is protein amount. Second thing we want to look for is fiber. Third thing we want to look for is sugar. And fourth thing we want to look for is overall calories. If we just look at those four things on the back of a label, we're going to be a more informed consumer. And if you want to go the extra mile, you look at that ingredients list. And if that thing, it looks like you can't pronounce it, just don't go there.
Yeah, I'm glad you called that out because with regards to protein and protein across the board, whether it's a powder or a bar, we'll go deeper and look at amino acids, specifically leucine. Am I getting that 2.5 gram threshold of leucine in order to activate muscle protein synthesis? Because I think we all want our protein to count and help us build lean muscle rather than have it just go to waste.
For sure. Great example. And I think, so many people think that they're doing a great job with like their collagen supplement in their coffee in the morning. And oftentimes that lacks leucine. So it's not doing a darn thing for your muscles. So that's a great call out.
Great for joints, not for muscle. It's a great booster. The way I view collagen is I throw it in when I do our smoothie with our whey and our cream. It's a booster. It's like I want my joint health. I think it's a nice booster.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so back to the behavior piece. Do you try to understand people's motivation for their why and maybe get an understanding of people's opportunities or weak spots, if you will? Because I think we're all mere mortals. No one, very few of us can be perfect in terms of how we eat, how we work out. Kids happen, desserts happen. So how do you think about understanding the motivations and people's weak spots?
Whether I'm working with a client on substance use management or I'm working with a client on nutrition and exercise related elements, I always want to look at the following. Are we engaging with this thing in order to expand our consciousness or escape our consciousness? If I'm working with a client and we uncover that the function of their sugar eating behavior is, gosh, like I just finally have my 30-minute break from work. I'm going to rush down to the kitchen and I'm going to, like ingest that sugar just because it feels so great. It's like, okay, are we using that to reward ourselves, give ourselves some type of a pleasure sensation, as opposed to, I really looked forward to my kid's birthday party on Saturday. I had a fat piece of funfetti cake and I knew I was going to do that and I looked forward to it. So I think oftentimes when we're looking at our health and fitness behavior, it behooves us to analyze the function of that behavior. Is the function escape? Am I just wanting to kind of get out of my own world? Is the function biological? Maybe I have under eaten fiber and protein. So when I get to that lunchtime, I'm really starving for that candy bar. If we uncover the function of the behavior, then we're well positioned to create a functional equivalent. Okay, if it's boredom, because I'll tell you what, when I'm doing reports on Excel, I find myself down in the cabinet looking for pretzels. Even myself after 10 years of doing this work. And so I recognize that that's avoidance behavior to the spreadsheet. And if I can say, okay, Ashley, you can have the pretzels, but first walk a lap around your house and then come back and see if you want to make that decision. I breathe in a pause between the antecedent and the behavior. I breathe in a pause between the habitual behavior and kind of that trigger and the behavior of me actually doing the thing that the higher me doesn't want to do. So I think all of those pieces are important, looking at the function of the behavior, looking at functional equivalence, sort of extending that pause. And here, I think a big theme in my work is sort of abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. It would be like, oh, like I don't get the pretzels. Is it that I don't get the pretzels, or, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to waking up in the morning without my gut feeling like it's locked up? And if I can approach from that future orientation and say, I'm actually giving myself something or not depriving myself of something, that tends to be tremendously helpful from like a holistic model.
So in your view, where do people have the most opportunity? Is it in achieving their goals? Is it Is it the goal itself? Is it the mindset? Is it the nutrition piece? Or is it not properly training?
It's really creating objective awareness and observing ourselves with curiosity and non-judgment. Any goal that you want to achieve in life, I don't care if it's health and fitness related, I don't care if it's business related, anything relationally related, it requires three things: the right strategy, the right mindset, and the right accountability. So we need to know the right strategy, and the right strategy is going to be different for someone who is in perimenopause or just started GLP drugs to achieve their desired results versus an 18-year-old male. And so we need to know our baseline and we need to know the scientifically accurate strategy in order to achieve our goals. That's number one. And there is so much conflicting information out there that it is like a pool that we wade through. So the right strategy is crucial, and many people are missing that piece. Once we have the right strategy, we move to the right mindset. The right mindset means I'm operating from that place of self love. I'm not working out because I hate myself. I'm not running 10 miles the next day because I was binge eating and binge drinking and I feel like crap about myself. The mindset also says I'm not a perfectionist. That's the number one thing that I see will blunt progress with the clients that I work with. And mindset also means I have growth mindset. So if I have the right strategy and I have the right mindset, then I need the right accountability. Accountability can be achieved from community, from family, from coaches, from teachers, essentially your tribe. And so when I'm intaking a new client, I'm looking at, is this a strategy problem, a mindset problem, or accountability problem, or a little bit of everything? And like, what do we need to do to scaffold more support in one of those areas?
Okay, I have a couple follow-ups here. One of them is you mentioned scientifically accurate strategy. I'm sure there must be some things you see on social media that drive you nuts here.
What do I see on social media that drives me nuts? I don't want fitness advice from someone who's not over 40 and doesn't have multiple children. I just don't want to hear it. I just don't. It's not relevant to me. There's plenty of young, smart trainers and nutritionists out there, but because the life of someone 35 plus entering into a different hormonal landscape, having the pressures of work, having kids that are, pulling on them all the time in the most loving ways and wanting to do a good job with it, but it's so hard. That's who I want fitness and nutrition advice from. So that's one thing that, I would point out. And then, I try to control my feed pretty well with only scientifically valid people. I love the mindbodygreen content. I love Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Stacey Sims, all these people that I admire in the space. I try to keep my feed filled with folks like that.
I'll take it a step further and say, and this goes actually in the gym, I'll never take advice or look to seek out a trainer an absolute who's in better condition than I am. That's not gonna happen either.
Yeah, it's true. It's called the zone of proximal development. It's Lev Vygotsky's theory, where he shares that in order for us to grow in any capacity, whether that be business, health, etc., we need to be seeking advice and mentorship from someone at least one standard deviation above where we're at. And when we have the gift of being in the orbit of people that are one standard deviation above where we're at, whether it be mindset, whether it be family, whether it be anything, you're just like, oh, okay, all right, I get it now. Like it requires to be marinated in that type of community for sure.
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
I love that. I love that.
Something else I wanna talk about, which you've incorporated with Colleen, is this idea of finding joy, finding something you love. And the specific example that came to mind for Colleen is one day she said, "We're going to Key Biscayne. We're not going to the gym. We're gonna go paddle." And I said, "Oh wow, okay, that's interesting." I'm like, "Be careful, it's hot out." And she came back and she had a blast, and she said that you really try to find ways to infuse joy and novelty. And Colleen loves the water. She loves being on the beach. It's her happy place, and you found that, and that's powerful in terms of incorporating a protocol, a routine that we look forward to, that really brings us back to our true self, and that, you know, childlike joy, if you will. Like the gym shouldn't be a chore. Working out shouldn't be a chore. So let's talk more about that.
Yeah, like when I look at like movement protocol for those that I serve, our movement protocol is going to be a combination of agility, balance, and coordination, resistance training, steps, cardio, and somatic expression, I would say. Like we need all of those elements in our movement protocol to be successful. And the number one predictor from a behavioral perspective on our movement strategy is whether we actually enjoy it. So we need to build in elements that we actually enjoy. When I'm working with a client, I'm looking at what results do you want and what are you willing and able to do from a lifestyle perspective. It really, your movement strategy needs to be a balance of those things. Otherwise, it's never going to be sustainable. And you're only going to do it when you're motivated, which is this much of the time. So we need to build in pieces that, yes, cover all of those elements of a well rounded movement strategy, but do so in a way that feels nourishing, happy, and just like you're not dreading it.
So if someone's listening, they're busy, busy working mom, 40 plus, like yourself, time is limited. How do you think about how does someone carve up that routine if they're not in Miami, they can't see you or they can't train with you, and they've got maybe a half hour to an hour a day in terms of what do I spend on resistance training? What do I spend on cardio? What do I spend on mobility? How should they carve out their week?
So we have 7 days in the week. I'll ask them, do you want medium, fast, faster, or fastest results on your goal? What do you want here? What can you give me? And they might say, I want fastest, but I can really only give you medium because of my obligations. Cool. Okay. I've got 7 days I can program you. What am I going to do with that? Well, I'm going to say, okay, let's analyze some data here. We might do a time study. We might kind of understand how time is spent, where they can leverage time, where there can be delegation or removal of responsibilities, what maybe no longer serves them that they're still engaged in, what boundaries are they not putting up. Oh, your room mom again? Really, girl? Because you just said that you were super duper busy, you don't have any time for yourself. So let's look at how much time you are cooking and bringing meals to your family. Let's look at how much time you are engaged in taking that extra project at work when your plate was already full. So we kind of look at a time study. Then we would say, okay, we see where you're at. Now let's look at when you are most likely and least likely to adhere to pro health behaviors. For some of my clients, they're the most successful if they work out 30 minutes before they get their kids up in the morning. Oftentimes, the more the day kind of progresses and decision fatigue hits in, and you get a call that you need to pick up your kid with their fever, and you just got a nasty email from your boss, your motivation level to actually execute a workout is going to diminish. So, getting earlier workouts can serve. There's also something called collateral impact. So, if you begin your day with a pro health behavior, you're more likely to have a cascade of pro health behaviors. You work out great, you're going to probably not go for the croissant, but you're going to go for like the eggs and toast. So we look at like, does that flow serve you, or does it really serve you to you really need sleep? Actually, we checked your sleep scores, you need to get that piece in. So we're going to try to hit that workout a few times a week during your lunch break. So we're going to look at like, how are you most successful with the movement protocol? Morning, evening, night. How do I catch you being good with that as a coach and gently inquire if it was missed? That accountability piece. And then when it comes to meals, we look at, do you like to cook? That's an important question. If you don't like to cook, I'm not going to ask you to do multiple bulk protein preps across the week. Maybe for you, it's better to outsource with a macro meal delivery service, or go to Whole Foods and get the prepared foods that are already there. What we're doing with busy working moms is we're looking at the entire framework of their 7-day week. We're looking for little optimization points for breathing in a little additional time. And then we're looking at how fast they want results, what they're able and willing to do. And we're kind of building that in. Let's assume that someone says, Ashley, I only have an hour, 3 days a week, and I don't like to cook. What do I do? I'd say, okay, well, I would like for you to do a day of yoga, a day of heavy lower body resistance training, and then a day of 30 minutes interval cardio and 30 minutes of whole body or upper body resistance training. How does that sound to you? Is it like ick, no likey, or is it like, yeah, okay, I could do that? That would probably be where I'd want to start, but it really needs to be a agreement between the coach and the client, because if it doesn't sound good, you're never going to do it.
Jason Walkup here, founder and co-CEO of mindbodygreen and the host of the mindbodygreen podcast. Please subscribe. You'll never miss a show and you won't regret it. So it sounds like your minimum effective dose, if you will, is going to depend on how realistic you are with your time, how realistic you are with your goals, how realistic you are and how hard or fast you can go. And then I also want to come back to environment, whether that's your kitchen, or I also think of your partner and your family and who you spend time with.
Yeah, great point. And kind of that self-belief, those boundaries that we're able to put up. Yeah, I mean, who we live with is a massive predictor of our behavior. Look, I want pizza and wine every night too, not gonna lie. Like, of course that sounds great. If I have a partner that's like, let's get Miami slice and like crack open a bottle of red, it's gonna be much harder for me to resist that versus someone who's on the same kind of game plan as I'm on.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's where marriages can start to run into rough spots from what I've seen when one person's on a different journey than their partner, whether it's a health journey or a spiritual journey or whatever it might be. But that's when kind of the rubber hits the road. Something I think about too as a parent, you've got maybe I wouldn't say pressure, but the added bonus of your kids are watching you. So whether you're eating healthier or having more restraint around desserts, or they see you saying, I'm going to the gym or I'm going for a run, your kids don't listen to you, they mirror you.
Yeah, they definitely do. Yeah, it's tricky. I've talked about this. I have 2 daughters, almost 4 and almost 9. And, you know, coming from my own history of eating disorders and using stimulants to be thin, it was always like, do I want them to come to my bodybuilding competitions? Am I teaching them that like appearance matters like most? I'm being judged on stage for my body. Do I want to have them see me weigh food? Do I want to bring that scale into the kitchen? And I really wrestled with that for a long time. And what I landed on with that was, I'm an athlete and my sport is nutrition and weightlifting. And this is how I showcase that result. But it's been tricky. I think it's tricky when we want to be that great example. We don't want to be too lax. We don't want to be too extreme. So how do we make sure that we showcase that balance? How do we make sure that our kids see us doing the healthy things, but not like too crazy, that I have an off season sometimes and I'm going to enjoy wine on a Friday and a cupcake or ice cream if I take them out to ice cream. And then how can I show them when I'm on season and it's game time, I can tighten that up real quick. That's been tricky for me.
Well, look, I would say it's positive. I think it shows you can, these are girls. Hey, you can be strong. You can be powerful. You can be beautiful. You can set goals and work hard to achieve them, and anything is possible. And I think that's really incredible for girls to see as it relates to self-esteem, confidence, goal setting, perseverance versus all right, yeah, we'll go out for cupcakes again, whatever. I'll have another. So
Yeah, thank you for that. Definitely. I think it is important to, showcase that to them and frame it up in a positive way.
yeah, it's like, look, if you want to be excellent in anything, I think there are some people who get lucky. Some people are just, geniuses or genetically gifted. But for 99.9% of us, it requires extraordinary discipline and work ethic and belief in yourself and something greater than yourself. That's the real secret. I don't know if that's a secret. It's difficult.
Yeah, and I think, like, our why is really consequential there. I think the outcomes we're looking at is consequential. I look at, like, for me personally, when I shifted the goal from the number on the scale to how much lean muscle can I build, that was, like, my swap, was instead of wanting to get down in the 130s. Okay. Instead of that, it became how much muscle mass can I gain? And surprise, when you gain muscle mass, a lot of other things begin to happen. And yeah, I think that that's huge. So especially when raising daughters, like when they ask me, like, why do you weigh your food? Why aren't you eating what we're eating? The answer is because I'm trying to grow as much muscle as possible. I just hit my 100-pound bench press PR.
So when you say, I think this is an important point and something I've talked about in the show, like abundance and scarcity mindset, which you just recently pointed out. And it's not the conversation around for a woman, I want to, it's not losing weight. It's no, I want to gain lean muscle mass. So I can effectively lose fat. I may end up adding weight, but I will essentially have less fat. I will be healthier. My clothes will fit better. I will be more confident. And so that's a big shift. And I think if you say to a woman or a man, like, you have to lose 40 pounds, first, you're just going to think of that in your head and said, oh God, versus you need to gain 10 pounds of lean muscle mass and do a body recomp and eat more protein and get rid of this. Like the mentality, scarcity, abundance.
100%. Yeah, something I can't stand is, you know, I hear all the time, "Oh my gosh, like, you lift so heavy, like, I don't wanna lift heavy because 'cause I'm gonna get bulky." Like, that I hear all the time. We don't, like, get bulky when we lift weights. The problem with that is that individuals are over-consuming calories and body fat acts as the pad on top of the muscle. So, yes, I thought of that as you were speaking, and definitely it's more palatable to the human brain to say, "You just gotta add these few things." It's not that you have to, like, completely drop 40 pounds, it's that we have to, like, add 10 pounds of lean muscle. We have to increase the amount of protein we're consuming. You got to get a few more steps in. That sounds a lot better, like in terms of marketing, than you gotta deprive yourself of food. Nobody wants to hear that.
I feel like it's adding and editing versus the old school was, control alt delete. Let's just delete, take everything away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you step in the gym and you're ready to train, what are some of your core beliefs in terms of reps, volume, hypertrophy? Help us understand where you're about to lift. Like, how do you ensure? And the example that comes to mind I'll use for me is, this phrase of garbage volume, where in a sense, like you're there, you're putting in the time, and whether you're doing, 10 reps or 20 reps, they're really not that hard. And your 10 could probably become 25 or more, but you're not really getting to that point of hypertrophy or fatigue. And I've gone through the motions. There have been times where I've certainly done that. So, but that's what comes to mind for you, like your rules for having a great session.
It starts with pre and post workout nutrition. No woman over 40 should be walking into the gym in a fasted state. I want for myself and all of those that I train to be going into the gym with adequate carbohydrates and adequate proteins in order to execute their lifts. Carbohydrates, glycogen is stored in the liver and in the muscles. And in order to have a badass lift, you need to be going into the gym with carbs. If you go in a fasted state, your body is going to, number one, not perform well in your exercise. And number two, it's going to thrust you into a catabolic state where your organism is scavenging for energy to use and will pull from your muscle, which is not what we want. So, number one, go in. For most people, that's going to look like about 30 grams of carbs, about 20 grams of protein. I love like a banana and a scoop of mindbodygreen protein powder. That's like a great pre-workout for me. I try to keep my fats minimal pre-workout. And that's going to be probably about like 45 minutes before I go into the gym. So I think when we talk about like making the most of your gym session, especially for women over 40, pre and post workout nutrition is highly consequential. We want to consume within 30 minutes post workout a large amount of carbs, a large amount of protein, and a moderate amount of fats. So that women over 40 have the shortest anabolic window of any human on planet Earth. And so we really need to strike while the iron's hot, and we need to nourish and fuel our musculature with adequate carbs and proteins. Carbs are the car that drive protein into the muscle. So you can't just have protein post workout. So that's like the number one thing is pre and post workout nutrition. In terms of the workout itself, let's assume that I have an hour and I'm going to do 20 minutes of cardio and 40 minutes of lifting. The first thing is making sure that I am going into that session starting with my lift. If I go in and I start with my cardio, that's not a great thing because I'm going to fatigue myself and I'm not going to be able to perform for my lifts. So the number one thing is when you walk into the gym, do your lift first and your cardio second. For a long time, I didn't do that. And from a behavioral perspective, if you're not going to do it, if you're someone who's like, I need to start on the treadmill, that's okay. Like you can do that if that's the only way you're going to get both in. But just know that it is best to execute your lift first and do your cardio second. So that's the first thing.
One quick clarification on the cardio piece. How do you define cardio? How do you think about heart rate zones? If you're doing your 40 minutes resistance training, is that 20 minutes zone 2, or am I doing zone 4, zone 5? How do you think about heart rate zones and cardio?
Ideally, for women over 40, we're executing interval cardio. And my preference there would be getting your heart rate as low as possible and getting it as high as possible. But it doesn't need to be that hardcore. If you're more comfortable with like walking and jogging, that type of oscillation, that's fine. But I tend to kind of be against the zone 2 steady state philosophy. I just think we get more bang for our buck when we're oscillating between like as low of a heart rate as possible and as high of a heart rate as possible for that cardio session, with the logic being that when we end that session, we're going to oxidize fat better throughout the day. It tends to just work better for us than a steady state cardio.
Yeah, agreed. I can only speak for the 50 plus male crowd, but for me personally, that works as well. So sorry, please continue. So we got cardio, and you were going to go to, I think, resistance.
So, with the resistance training, I think the number one thing I see that people need to understand and correct is the tempo of the motion. So, in a shoulder press, for example, we have our concentric part of the motion when you're contracting the muscle group used. We have our eccentric part of the motion when we're extending the muscle group used.
So for those listening, you're going up concentric, and then eccentric is down, if I got that right.
For a shoulder press, yes.
So all the way up and then all the way down. Okay.
And when we execute the concentric portion quicker and the eccentric portion slow as molasses. And so whenever you're considering what muscle group you're using, when you're extending that particular muscle group, you go super duper slow. And when you're contracting that muscle group, you go faster. So that the tempo of the motion is highly consequential. For a bicep curl, for example, you're contracting when the hand is close to the shoulder, you're extending when the hand is further away from the shoulder. So that extension should be quite slow. And then your concentric, your contraction is a little faster. So I think tempo is like a huge thing to consider.
So slightly faster going up And then going down, you want to go slightly slower.
In the case of the shoulder press and the bicep curl, that's correct. Yeah.
What about other body parts?
Well, it's really like, let's take, for example, a reverse Nordic curl for your quads. Like when you're going down, you're extending the muscle group. When you're coming up, you're contracting. For your, let's say a leg lower, it is, you're extending when you're coming down, you're contracting when you're coming up. So it's a good point. I think probably most motions that we go through, the up part is going to be concentric, even with a squat, but not always.
But it sounds like most of us are probably just going too fast both ways. And a general rule of thumb is probably just slow down and focus on the form and the motion.
Yes, I think that's true. I think really slowing down our lifts, like slowing down the tempo is important. The progression element is super important. So, most of us go to the dumbbell rack and we're like, "Oh, that's my weight for biceps. Oh, that 10-pound weight, that's my weight. I'm going to pick that up." When in reality, we should be slowly, the whole game with building lean muscle is increasing the stimulus on the muscle. And so if you've been doing tens on bicep curls for 2 years, you're not putting any additional stimulus on that muscle group. Let's move it up to 12 pounds and maybe do a few less reps, but at least, progressively make our load a little harder.
So, for example, instead of doing, a standard, call it 3 sets of 10, maybe do the first set at try to get to 12, and the second set, maybe you raise the rate and get to, raise the weight and get to 8. And then the last set, maybe get to 6 and raise the weight again.
That's called a pyramiding technique, and you definitely can do that. I'm a big fan of alternating strength weeks and hypertrophy weeks. So when we talk about strength training, we're talking about building power within the muscle fiber itself. So think, I'm working on a farm and I need to push this big barrel of hay to the corner of the farm. That's going to be our strength. How much can we push one time? And so there I'm looking for more power within my muscle fibers, whereas hypertrophy is more, how can I kind of build the shape of the muscle in a certain way? So when I'm programming for clients, I'm always alternating strength weeks to hypertrophy weeks. What that looks like in terms of reps and weight is that strength weeks are always going to be lower repetition, higher weight. And hypertrophy weeks are always going to be higher repetition, lower weight to get more glycogen in the muscle itself.
So, is it safe to say that strength is going to be 10 reps or less and hypertrophy north of 10 reps ish?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah. Our strength is typically hovering within the 6 to 8 rep range, and our hypertrophy is going to be, I would say 10 plus. I feel like after 15 reps, we're entering into endurance zone, and below 5 reps, we're entering into like power zone. So I feel like the spectrum goes power, strength, hypertrophy, endurance.
And so, how do you think about those weeks? Is it 2 weeks on and then a switch, or a month on? How do you think about that rotation?
I like to alternate every other week.
Okay, wow.
And then after about the eighth week, we're going to deload for a week.
Okay. What does deload mean?
Deload means that you're giving your system a bit of a break. For busy working moms, I don't always program in a deload week because there's going to be a vacation, there's a kid that's going to get sick. Like we naturally go through getting a deload, but it's just good to have in the back of your mind that you don't want to be, because progression is so important. You don't want to be progressing, and like blowing up. You want to be progressing and then kind of coming down. It's like a scalloping technique. So over time, we want to see an upward trend line, but it shouldn't be perfectly straight. So your deload is going to be the week where you take a little break. You maybe do more yoga and Pilates than you usually would. If you love lifting, you're going to lift maybe at 60% of your typical lifts.
And then, how do you think about volume? We can use shoulders, for example. So, if I want to work on my shoulders, what is the frequency on a weekly basis? What type of sets, reps in terms of volume? If I'm looking to increase my lean muscle mass for my shoulders?
Mhm. I would say for any body part that you really want to enhance, for my clients that are 35 plus, it's going to be growing glutes. That's going to be the thing that they're going to want because our glutes tend to flatten.
We live in Miami. I understand the
Yes, yes. But for real, like, even if you don't live in Miami, like, it's obvious that women's glutes deflate past the age of 35, and most people.
men too.
Men's too? Okay, yeah, men's too, excuse me. Human beings, glutes deflate after the age of 35, and so any muscle group that you really wanna target, we're looking at hitting that thing 2 to 3 times a week, and so, for, like, basically, overall volume is going to be a multiplication equation between the amount of times you work out, the amount of sets you do, the amount of reps you do, and the amount of weight that you do. So if my client comes to me and they're like, Ashley, my only goal is to grow my glutes, I'm going to be like, fabulous. How much time do you have? Oh, you're going to give me 4 lifts a week? Sweet. At least 2 of those lifts are going to be glute focused.
If you're doing glutes twice a week, how do you think about sets and reps and weight?
So when we're building a workout, we start with compound moves and we move to accessory moves thereafter. So your first 1 to 2 moves in your workout should be compound moves. What a compound move is a move that engages multiple muscle groups. What an accessory move is a move that isolates a muscle group. So we want for like my perfect glute workout is going to be starting with a hip thrust, like how many hip thrusts you have to do to get like nice glutes past 35. You're doing a lot of hip thrusts, like weight on the hip bones of the flexion of the pelvis towards the ceiling. And so I would love to start my workout with a hip thrust and maybe ass to grass squats. Barbell on my back. I'm going down as low as I can with a wide stance foot. So that would be like my 2 compound moves. And then I might move to more accessory motions. So after our compounds and we move to more accessory motions, we begin to do things called superset. So in your compound moves, not only do you not superset, but you have about 2 to 3 minutes of boring ass wait time in between sets. And people hate that.
So yeah, I definitely hate that. I do like 45 seconds max. So so how many for that the 2 sets you just described, how many sets and how many reps?
It depends. I would say if it's a strength week, we might do 4 sets at 6 to 8 reps. If it's a hypertrophy week, we might do 4 sets at 10 to 12 reps. And the difference is going to be the amount of weight that you're able to execute between those weeks.
So that's 8 sets a day for so 16 for the week if I'm doing my math correctly. Got it. And then but then you're throwing on a superset on top of that.
Yes.
Okay. So walk us through that.
So I'd like to say that like my favorite way to use rest time between sets is I bring all of my weird PT tools. Like, do you ever feel like your hands are 100 years old because you're on your phone so much? Mine do for sure. I feel like I have arthritis on my right hand in my early 40s. And so like I'll use things like this. I'll use a lacrosse ball. I'll use like any rehab, prehab tools. I'll stretch, I'll do yoga. Like that's how I'm using my rest time so that I get a little restoration and flexibility like in the mix. So we do 1 or 2 compound moves to start our workout. We do the long rest time with some rehab and some stretching in between. And then now we move into our accessory motions, our isolation work. So for that isolation work, when we're supersetting, we always superset antagonist muscle groups, which means I'm not going to get junk volume, as you call it. I'm not going to do like a leg extension and a reverse Nordic curl because both of those are quad moves. I'm going to do a leg extension. I'm going to superset with the antagonist or opposite muscle group of the quad, which is
Hamstrings.
hamstring. Yep. So I'm going to be hitting the leg curl, leg extension, rest. Leg curl, leg extension, rest. So yeah, I think like a really solid glute workout is going to start with one or two compounds, like a hip thrust and a squat. And then we're going to move to maybe two solid supersets, leg extension and leg curl. Maybe we would do our second superset, glute abduction, where the knees are separating from one another. And we are positioning our upper body pretty flat. Our spine is kind of parallel to the ground. And we might superset that with a deadlift.
So in terms of, so we're covering, this is a lot on, legs, glutes. What's the math in terms of the number of sets I'm actually doing in a day for legs?
It depends on what you're willing and able to do.
What would you like people to do?
It depends on your goal. I don't know your goal. If your goal is purely physique versus your goal is purely health span, that's going to be like a different type of workout. I would say you can get a really solid workout in between 30 and 60 minutes for lower body. Like you can get a really solid workout in.
Got it. So it feels like the rest piece, the volume's not that bad. If I'm doing the math, it's like if we're doing the supersets, you're looking at 10 sets essentially for like major body part in a session.
Have you heard of the term newbie gains?
Yeah, you get the most gains when you first start.
Yeah. And then every level you increase, it's like it is exponentially harder, right? And so when we talk about like what volume should I do, it's really like, well, where are you starting? Like you're gonna get that initial jump and like great results when you first start the game. And then it's gonna get harder and harder.
Oh, I've definitely, when I first joined anatomy and started working with the trainer, I wasn't really doing the volume I needed to. I just kind of like did the bare minimum. And I started taking our creatine and I started going 3 days a week for an hour. And at age, I think 48, I gained like 6 pounds of lean muscle mass in a month, where it would be so hard for me now. It was like my newbie gain to gain 6 pounds, given I lift pretty frequently now in a month.
Yeah. Shout out to your creatine. I started taking it. I'd never taken creatine before. I started taking it probably about a year and a half ago. And I think the first thing I noticed was that like I just wouldn't get as sore anymore. Like my muscle recovery was optimized. Like my ability to sustain lean mass when I'm going into prep and I am cutting my calories, my ability to maintain my muscle mass is significantly different taking creatine. So I love the creatine supplement. It's amazing. Also, the raspberry one is just delicious. And, when we look at targets, how long is this going to take me? Under optimal conditions, we're looking at a 1 to 2% of body fat loss per month for a woman and about a half pound of lean muscle gain for a woman over 40, like under optimal conditions per month. And so you being able to achieve 6 pounds of lean muscle in 1 month just speaks to your freakishly athletic genetics, like your HRV, your VO2 max, like you are a specimen.
You are very kind, but I think it is a lot of the newbie, because the reality, do the math, like 6 pounds, like not do the math, like if we're listing, it's like 6 pounds in a month would be 72 pounds a year. That's just like insane. It was just, I wasn't training. It was everything at once. I think that's the most encouraging thing, the larger point for people who are like, you know what, I don't really train. Like if you really dedicate yourself for a month, you are going to see such incredible results. And that is the beauty of resistance training layered on with proper nutrition. You will see results 100%.
You will see results and you'll feel results. I just got a video from my 68-year-old client who was water skiing in Wisconsin, like a badass. And it's like, it's in those functional moments that you don't expect when you're running to get to your flight, when you're picking up your grandchild, when you're putting your suitcase in the overhead compartment. I love when my clients text me like, oh my God, like I just did this with ease for the first time. Strength training, like the best BOGO deal in the universe is that you don't have to pick a team. You don't have to pick team aesthetics or team health because honestly, if you're doing it right, it's together. Like the same things that make you feel confident in a dress on date night are going to be the same things that help you pick up your grandchildren and like run to your flight to Bali in the airport. Like these things are not mutually exclusive.
So, what do you recommend to all your clients, no matter what the circumstance?
Operate from a place of self-love. And I say that because I spent so many years in this binge restrict cycle with myself with alcohol, food, and exercise. I would be good during the day. And I'm saying that with air quotes, I would be good and I would be working my corporate job and I would like eat minimally. And, I would go to a HIIT class. And then by the end of the day, I would be starving and stressed out, and I would capitulate to the food and the wine, and then I would wake up feeling like crap about myself, and I would exercise from that place of self-hatred. And I think this goes back to that scarcity abundance mindset that you shared about, which is like if we can operate from this place of honoring like our organism, like of moving and eating out of a place of love for ourselves versus hating ourselves. I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do. Approaching every setback with curiosity and non-judgment as simply a data point to enhance our algorithm is particularly helpful.
Do you see that a lot with people?
The binge restrict piece.
Just the mind. I think to me, I go up a level. It's like the mindset piece.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That is all of it. When we look at the chain of beliefs inform thoughts, thoughts inform emotions, emotions inform behaviors, and behaviors inform outcomes. It all starts from that belief that has to do with self-belief. Do I have to be perfect? Do I hate my legs because they have cellulite on them? Like fill in the blank on how these negative beliefs and thought patterns like influence us. Yes, I see it all the time.
We've covered so much today. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you would like to touch on?
I think if people are looking for the most effective thing they can do to optimize body composition, it's going to be to eat a higher protein diet while they're looking at their fats and not fearing carbs. So I think from like a macro perspective, the biggest problems that I see with people entering into my practice are they eat healthy, but their macros are off. They're eating too much fat, they're not eating enough carbs, and they're not eating enough protein, and they're not aware of their overall energy balance, calories in, calories out. So I think from a nutritional standpoint, that would be like the most important thing for someone to look at. From a movement perspective, ensuring that the movement protocol that you've signed up for is something that you don't hate, and making sure that you execute weightlifting in a slow and controlled way, minimizing the amount of momentum that is used throughout the workout is going to be the best bet in terms of things to look at from an exercise science perspective.
What are your favorite carbs?
I categorize carbohydrates into two categories: non-starchy carbs and starchy carbs. So, what I'm looking for, I really like large meals. I don't want to ever feel hungry. And so I'm going to eat an insane amount of non-starchy vegetables. So non-starchy vegetables, starting your day with them, create a fibrous net that sits on your gut and actually modifies the amount of calories that you intake. It modifies the amount of glucose spike that you're getting with each meal. And it aids in satiety. So I eat an insane amount of cherry tomatoes, asparagus, broccoli, Persian cucumbers, bell peppers, and leaves. Those are like my personal favorite. Those have like high insoluble fiber content. Soluble fiber wise, I think berries are the best bang for your buck. If you struggle with a sweet tooth, switching over to berries, they have the lowest sugar and the highest fiber and lowest calories of pretty much any fruit, and they're delicious. So I think those are my favorite: berries and non-starchy veggies. But there's a place for all.
And you also bananas pre-workout.
Yes, I do. I think, potatoes and bananas are demonized, but I eat them a lot. Potatoes have a high potassium content, which really help muscles appear full. In fact, in peak week prior to stepping on stage, you're consuming a high amount of potassium-rich foods like sweet potatoes, bananas, coconut water, things like that.
You mentioned potassium in terms of electrolytes. If you ever see Ashley around Miami, you are always carrying a giant water jug.
I am. This one.
So so how do you think I wanna talk about water too, because there's also, like, the stereotypical when you see someone, like, someone who's really serious in the gym or they're a professional, like, they've got a giant thing of like, let's talk about water and why water is so key.
Water is key for many different reasons. I think these gum and water are like my hacks when I'm in a cut. If I'm getting prepped for stage, I really love using gum and water as a punctuation ritual. So when I say punctuation ritual, I mean what signals the end of your meal. It's basically telling your brain like we're stopping eating. We're not going into seconds and thirds and fourths. So from a behavioral perspective, this is 64 ounces of insulated water. When I wake up in the morning and I make my kids water bottles, like all of us are making our kids water bottles and our kids lunch. So my coaching to my clients is make a couple meals for yourself and fill up your own canteen. I'm going to fill it up with water. I'm going to fill it up with raspberry electrolyte, and I'm going to fill it up with ice so that I'm incentivized to drink it so it's delicious. And I don't forget to take my creatine because there's negligible difference in terms of creatine timing. It just matters that you take it every 24 hours. If you don't take creatine every day, you may as well flush it down the toilet because it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. So, how do we make sure that we're ingesting the correct supplements? You put it in your water because you do that first thing. It's your anchor habit. So I really like I like filling up my canteen because I know that it's going to be with me all day. It has a supplement that I need in it, and it's going to make me feel sated. It's going to act as a signal to my brain that I'm finished with my meal when I consume a large amount of water. And I love my canteen. I show it off all the time.
Well, also you need water to build lean muscle. Like, if you're not drinking enough water, you're not gonna have get results.
Yes, yes. Water is great from like a holistic and fitness perspective. I largely use it as a satiety lever for myself, but that's good. I'll look into the water piece.
Well, I also say, for me personally, if I'm dehydrated, sometimes I'll reach for food and I realize, oh wait, I'm just dehydrated. I need to drink more water, and I think everyone falls into that bucket.
For sure. Water also expands the food in one's stomach. So one of the reasons that I'm a big fan of most people's stomach acids aren't so sensitive that they need to worry about them being diluted very much. And so I'm a big fan of drink 20 ounces of water before your meal, drink at least 20 ounces of water after your meal. That's going to help expand the food in your gut, which signals satiety hormones to your brain. So, yes, water is good.
And so, where can people find you?
At Mothership Wellness.
And that's on Instagram. You're in all the channels, and mothershipwellness.com.
Yeah, at Mothership Wellness on Instagram.
Awesome. Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you.